As I see it, there are several important things which remain foremost in my mind. And these that I'm going to speak of, not to give you detail or word for word of what the report consisted of. And the first thing that comes to mind in this subject is, as we were talking with Peter and Charles a moment ago about Dr. Ken Houston, who in fact saw something at the time of the Sputnik at a place called Waimea, where he was stationed in New Guinea in 1959. The Russian satellite should have been going in one direction, and he saw it going in the opposite direction. And he theorized, rightly so I guess, at the dinner table the following day that it must have been a flying saucer. And this is the first occasion which I'd ever heard anybody refer to flying saucers as such. There was a gathering about the size of this tonight, all sitting around the table, and then the subject got off the flying saucers, and of course nobody but Dr. Ken Houston really believed that they existed. Sometime after this, and I say sometime, it was a matter of months, I was coming back from a 3-week walkabout. Walkabout is a patrol, and it was my job at that particular time in 1959 to be an inspector of the schools. There were 12 schools in a very large district, some of them up in the old Sandy Ranges, and it was my job to go around and check on them, and as an inspector might do. And then on my way back, the normal thing was to get a whaleboat, have a whaleboat waiting for me at a particular spot, and to row back along the coast. And it was on this particular night, as I was drawing in to my home station, somewhere between 7 and 8, I guess, I looked across towards the mountains, the mountain range, a mountain which I knew very well. And there I saw what I thought was a Tilly lamp. A Tilly lamp is a pressure paraffin lamp, and at a distance it sparkles, rather like the magnesium children's playthings, what do you call them, sparkles? Yes, rather like this in effect, except that it's round. And I took it to be a Tilly lamp, and it was only afterwards that I thought maybe it was not. In fact, I thought that it could not have been, because on this particular mountain, which is something over 2,000 feet high, it is rather desolate, and certainly there are no gardens there. Certainly nobody in his right mind would be up there without a particular reason, such as being a member of a geographical society or something like this, of this description. And certainly nobody would be up there at night with a Tilly lamp. Now these thoughts passed through my mind as I gazed up to this light from the sea. But still, it was far from the subject of flying saucers, and so I accepted that there was just somebody stupid enough to be there. When I arrived home, however, again I was rather remote from the subject because I was not well informed, neither was I really interested in the subject of UFOs. But when I arrived home, one of my head teachers, native Papuan teachers, by the name of Stephen Moy, Gill, which might sound rather suspicious, he came to me and said, "Last Sunday night I saw a rather strange thing. You know all there is to know about strange things. You tell me what it is." And then he described, and I've written this down in a letter that I wrote to a friend of mine, David Dewey, who was the head and principal of St. Aidan's Teachers College. He described an object over the sea. And I asked him all kinds of questions about it, its size, its shape. Was it like a sextant? Was it like a plate? And each time he came back, he said, "No, it was like a saucer. This is the nearest thing that I can relate it to." And I'm assuming that at least there are a few people here who have read that letter. If you haven't, Mr. Bowen here will surely let you have a copy of it to see. And it was from then that I became rather curious. And remember how I signed that to David Dewey, who later on, by the way, was able to sign another statement that he and his wife had seen to the flying saucer. But before this, of course, he was interested academically, but not terribly convinced. And what did I sign myself as?
Doubting Bill.
Doubting Bill, that's right. Doubting Bill. Now you see with this signature, this is going back in retrospect, in this signature, there was somehow or other forming in my mind the possibility of these things. The integrity, in my mind, of Stephen Moy could never be doubted. I had extreme trust and faith in him as a character and as an honest person. And Frederick and I were mentioning just a short time ago about, in fact, the significance and the importance of having doubts. The scientist having doubts, and how this can lead then to research and investigation. So I guess I must have been at this kind of stage. And then, of course, before I sent the letter off, then the actual sightings of mine occurred. Now, not talking about actual incidents or why it was, how it was recorded, but the few things that stand foremost in my mind. This is going back now 11 and a half years. And there are some things which are tremendously vivid. I'll mention them. The lights that I mentioned before, that seemed like two lamps. This remains most vivid, and a vivid pictorial impression in my mind. An outline of the saucer, separated, a separated portion, or a dark portion between it and this sparkling light. So there's a light outline, darkness, and the object itself. That is most vivid. Another most vivid thing is the shaft of blue electric light emanating from the top of the craft up towards the heavens. An electric blue light, rather, I think I described it as a pencil with light. Another very vivid impression remains there, without any doubts at all, that in my own mind, in any case, that I saw it, and that is the waving men. I saw Amy Michelle on Saturday. He said, you know, there was a character also who saw somebody wave, and I said, well, that's me. He said, oh, that's you. And so he became even more interested. But this, in fact, is one thing which I just can't quite out of my mind, that something that looked human waved in apparent response to whatever wave that we gave. Outside of the report itself, there were one or two incidents which I recorded because I felt that it was going to be a reasonable report, that they should be entered, although I didn't attach any theories about whether they were connected with the event of the sighting or not. One was this ear-splitting sound, noise, like a gun report, I guess, or something which in any case had been out of my experience before. That evening, it was overcast, and I was inside, and then there was this great noise. I looked out the window, could see nothing. Some people have asked me whether I smelled anything. I don't recall smelling anything either. But that's a noise which will always remain with me. The other one was also a noise, and that was, again, after sighting, and that was the noise of as though something had been dropped from a great height, some metallic substance, I guess, being dropped from a great height onto the galvanized iron roof of one of the, well, in fact, of a partition of the building I was in. So convinced I was that something had been dropped, that I got somebody to climb up the next morning to examine the roof. And nobody could find any article, nobody could find any dent. What that was, whether it was connected with the events of the night, I have no idea. But I wrote those down, as a supplement or agenda, rather than part of the report itself. But why did I report this thing? Why didn't I just stand and look and tell the story afterwards? Well, this, I suppose, was the fact that I've been doing a bit of journalistic work, and also that I've been doing some other studies, and I was in the habit of carrying paper and pencil for this very thing. And I suppose when I first saw this object and had distinguished it from Venus, because it was in virtually in the same direction, that I thought, well, now, this is what I've been waiting for. I guess I thought this. This is what I've been waiting for. This is the sort of thing that nobody will believe unless I write it down. In fact, I won't believe it unless I write it down either, because you know how it is, especially in the tropics. I didn't have any whiskey on board, but you never know that people might or might not believe that. And I wrote this down, minute by minute. Whenever anything happened, I put it down. And it was just as simple as that. I had a rather academic approach to it. I was not excited. Not that I remember. Certainly I had a calm enough mind to be able to record the events without any trouble. I wonder, too, if the reason for the rather sane behaviour on the part of the natives was because I treated it as a reasonable sort of thing rather than becoming agitated. And I believe that had I become terribly excited, they would have become terribly excited too. Had I been in fear, they would have been. I feel that they were watching me for a lead, because it was out of their experience. I asked them afterwards, had they ever seen anything like this before? Stephen Moy, of course, had. A different kind of thing. But he was the only one, really, who was possibly more interested in it than I would have imagined. Well, this is a brief outline of just sort of a reminiscing. And I feel that you know as much about these sightings as I do myself by now. They've been passed from person to person. I was in Birmingham a week ago and picked up a book on UFOs. I was rather surprised to find there. I can't tell you what the title was now, but I think it was selling for about 5 and 6pence. And what I saw and how I saw it and the reason for my seeing it, I'd be ashamed to tell you. But there it was. This is not the first occasion. Of course, I've seen things like this. But apart from that sort of thing, you know the kind of, you know what I feel. Is that right? Everybody's familiar with what I wrote in those days. And
well, if they're not, they soon will be.
Soon will be.
We're going to publish it.
I'm very happy to make clear any other little points, perhaps, that people might be interested in.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Would they like to ask questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. When you saw this thing and looked at it, and I appreciate that this could only be a subjective impression if you had it at all, did you have an impression of being observed?
No, I didn't. It would be said all said. Everybody can hear me.
No, you didn't. Thank you very much.
Well, I tell you why. Because it seemed as though the people on the craft, let's assume those people, and we've got to start somewhere, were more interested in what they were doing on the craft than in us. This was the impression we got.
May I just supplement that question by saying, in fact I misunderstood on do not be sufficiently attentive, but I gathered that you had said earlier that you were aware of somebody waving to you, so it doesn't look as though you were observed.
Yes, but there's a matter of definition of observation.
Yes.
I think in my report you will see that they waved and then they seemed to carry on with whatever the business was on deck.
How many?
We fought four.
4 waves?
Not once, no. There were four, it seemed as though there were 4 beings.
4 waves in turn?
Yes, this one was.
That's one wave. They didn't wave. A wave.
Not they altogether, no.
Father Gill, how many people observed?
37, was it 35 or 37?
38, I don't know exactly. How many actual sightings were?
2 nights which we could really be certain about.
With more witnesses the first night?
Yes, that's right.
What did they say there?
David Dewey, the man I mentioned at the Teachers' College, was my first correspondent. And I asked him, actually, Norman Cutwell, Canon Norman Cutwell, was on patrol at that particular time. And I mentioned to David Dewey, asking him whether he thought it would be worth, or whether Norman Cutwell would be interested, because Norman Cutwell had been an unofficial chronicler of sightings that had been going on around New Guinea for months. He had been keeping records of people who had been coming in from all kinds of places, up in the hills and along the coast and on boats. Such recordings as moons exploding, this kind of thing. I just don't remember how many there were, but there were quite a number of them. And so I mentioned today to David, did he think Norman would be interested? I sent a copy over to Norman. Norman then sent it on to Brisbane, and the Brisbane people gave it to the papers. That's how it came out.
Could I ask this? We've read a lot in recent years about not popular accounts of the cargo cult among the people of New Guinea. Now, I'm curious to know whether any of your native people there at the mission, whether any of them were inclined to interpret it in terms of that.
Not where I was. They were rather more sophisticated. Not that I suppose that's the wrong word to use, because there are quite a number of sophisticated people who still believe in the cargo cult. But it's not that particular area. The wrong area.
A supplementary question. Through that one that's just been asked. You did say earlier that there was one man in whom you had complete confidence, who had previous experiences.
Yes.
He was a Papuan,
yes.
And but in whom you had complete trust of his integrity and trust.
Yes.
Are you aware that he was all psychic? I mean, did he have visions, or did he have means of communication with discarnate beings, or had he ever interested you at all in the psychic field?
Neither before nor since.
Neither before nor since.
No.
So you are not aware that he was at all psychic?
No. This was the only, to my knowledge, he was one of...
I wonder what made you feel that he was completely reliable in this field?
No, completely trustworthy
as an observer.
No, as a person whose statements I had no reason to doubt. He's neither before nor since has he ever communicated with me that he's seen or heard anything that's not about it.
Were you able to estimate roughly the distance?
No, I wasn't.
Away from you after the object when you sighted it, either the first or the second time?
No. At the time, as I remember it, there was no reason to wave other than just to wave because this thing was there and there seemed to be people on.
And was it a matter of miles or of hundreds of yards? Could you get as near as that?
No, feet. Hundreds of feet. Yes.
It was dark, wasn't it?
Not in the beginning.
Not at the beginning.
It was dusk. And then, of course, went into darkness, yes.
And was it self-illuminant?
Yes.
So it really was saw it by its own light, almost?
That's right, because after say, 6:30, it was, there was no light apart from the stars.
But I remember it stopped about an hour or more.
That's right.
Didn't it?
Yes. Quite a long time.
So,
Perhaps you could elaborate on this question of distance as to how you calculate it.
Yes. Any mathematicians? Otherwise I'll keep quiet. Because this is my problem. I was aware that the important thing, one of the important things for me, is to try to estimate the size of the craft. So I had to assume one or two things. Most importantly, I had to assume that the figures were of, say, average size. Now, the average size of a Papua would be about 5'7", 5'8", as a normal man. And so the next day, I got one of my average-sized school pupils and marched him across the playing field until he became the size of the things on the craft. And I did this with measurement of my hand. Now, whether this is the right way to go about it or not, whether elevation makes any difference or not, I wouldn't know, but that doesn't matter. This is what I had to do. And once we got him there, then my handspan, which was roughly about 5 inches, I had to correct that. At one stage I said 8 inches. And then I realized that, in fact, when I was not conscious of having my hand up for a span, that in fact it was a lot less. And so I had to then readjust from 8 to 5 inches. And so then we got out across, and I measured across one of the school buildings and told them then to get their little foot rule or yard rule or something and measure the distance. And we got around, what was it, 30 feet, 33 feet? Something like that.
This is the diameter of the craft.
This was, no, I wouldn't say diameter, it was the length.
The length.
The length as we saw it.
Yes.
What shape was it?
Pardon?
What shape was it?
We assumed it was disc. It was a round thing, you know. Not
a cylindrical.
Cylindrical, yes, cylinder, that's right. Circular. Yes, it had depth, yes. And legs.
These superstructures that looked as though it might be illuminated swell of indeterminate shape.
It had what I described in my report as a superstructure, which seemed to be the rather like the top of the boat deck, you know, what do I call it? Wait, the top of the top of the deck. Superstructure. That was
right
off the base. But
I'm sorry.
Cylindrical, this thing. Did you have anything coming up above that?
No. Oh, well, yes, there was a deck structure. There were two parts of it. What I call the body of the craft.
Yes.
And then there was what I interpreted as a superstructure on top of that.
What shape was that?
It reminded us, because we were right on the coast, and it reminded us of the superstructure of on the deck of a craft.
Were the humanoids on that?
Yes, they were. No, not on top of it, but as though they were behind it. In fact, we could see no legs. We assumed that was from waist upwards, you see.
Were there any of there? Or was this kind of
it seemed as though
cover over it?
we couldn't identify any cover over it.
Was there any separated photographs? Any separated photographs?
We didn't have any. I don't think we even had a camera, but we certainly had no film. We had no binoculars. Nothing like this. I mean, we weren't expecting it to say.
And the distance again?
The distance, at one stage, I thought 300-400 feet, something like that, at the nearest point.
And the furthest?
The furthest, you mean when it was stationary? The cloud cover I estimated by the mountain was about 2,000 feet, and it was under the cloud cover.
So it could have been between a quarter and 3 miles away.
I guess so. You see, I'm only judging on the nearest point by what I assumed was the size of the...
on the nearest, not the furthest.
What?
Your observations are based on the nearest, not the furthest.
My observations of the dimensions of the craft were, yes.
And all these figures mean that this is the nearest. 300 feet away we're talking about. Not talking about 2 miles away. You couldn't see that.
No, I'm talking between let's say between 300 feet and 2,000 feet.
2,000 feet. That's a long way. No, that's not.
No, that's yards. That's yards.
That's half yards. That's a half mile. That's 6,000 feet from my I can remember the surprise I had here. The 20th century check to the surprise before you begin to visualize what you're seeing. I mean, I look at you, I see you immediately. Yeah. But if you came out of the sea in the mist, I was sort of not expecting you. It took me quite a little time before I tried to hear it. Just said that it was the other way around. He was really impressed with the visibility of these people when they were quite close, and then as they receded, continued to see them. Yes. So then if you once see them, as it recedes, you can see it to its further mile.
That's right. The truth is that regarding, from pre-impressions, I can't give dates or times, but there was a stage when the cloud cover, I estimated about 2,000 feet, judging on the height of the mountain very close to us, about a couple of miles away. But when it was under that, and there was a glow reflected from it, emanating from it, or seemed to be, onto the other surface of the cloud. So therefore, it must have been around and under 2,000 feet. And then, at the stage when it came closer, and in my report, I remarked that we thought it was going to land. In fact, we began waving, hoping that it would.
He said that your impression of being was the remote one coming nearer. I thought, when I began to utter just now, that your impression was that you had seen it nearer and watched it receding.
We did both. We watched it come and go. Yes.
The reflection on the surface of the cloud which you just referred to, was this orange or yellow or roseate or red, or how would you describe the colour?
In your head?
No.
As far as you recall. Was it of an even colour all over, or did it...
I think so.
Right towards the
I think so.
You think it was?
I think it was.
Would you say that it appeared to be, say, orange or yellow, a brighter orange and yellow towards the base?
No, really, it's too far away from the sea. The time
describe the colour of the brighter base.
No, that's 11 years is a long time. But what I can say is that it tended to be a more yellowy light of the craft, in contrast to the white moving light around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I asked you a seemingly odd question as to whether you were conscious of being observed, which on the face of it is rather silly. If you're looking at something a great distance away, how are you to know? I meant rather this. Did you have any sort of feeling of a physical kind? Did you have the feeling of a stoated rabbit, suddenly focusing your attention and unable to divert it? Or did you have any sort of tingling, such as a frightened person might feel if he feels there's a ghost around? In other words, was there any subjective physical reaction to this that you can recall?
Only once.
Which was?
And that was the time of that noise I spoke of.
Yes. And your reaction to that was what?
Startled. And there was certainly some kind of emotional reaction, but I can't really describe it. Physical, I guess a little.
Reaction.
No, there was no reaction in the sense that there was some outside force acting towards me. No.
Did it make any noise at all?
No. No noise, no smell. The only noises that were made were, in fact, when the craft was not visible to me, was out of sight or gone, and I recorded them only because they happened, not because I made any necessary connection with the sighting.
What sort of psychological effect did you have on the rest of the mission? Did you notice any sort of sense of religious feeling related to
No.
the reaction anyway?
No. I made some preliminary remarks to the report afterwards about this kind of thing. And I suggested there were many suggestions which I made, and which I made virtually no comment about. They're only suggestions that passed through my mind. And one of them was this kind of thing, that perhaps me, as an authoritative figure, my reaction would then have been passed on to the natives, who were much less sophisticated than I was. And because I had an objective approach to it, so did they. Now, had I had any other approach, other kind of approach towards it, I believe they would have too.
Father Gill, have you seen in the review anywhere else any photographs of the alleged number of this kind which seem to you to bear any resemblance to that which you saw?
Oh, yes, I have, yes. I can't label them for you, but yes, I have. Not in toto, but certain aspects of other sightings are reasonably close to what I have seen. Yes.
You see, I examine the photographs which are submitted to the review, and inevitably they're nearly always technically bad. I'm an optimist by nature and a pessimist by experience, but I'm not cynic. And I examine everything on its merits. And over a period of several years of examining many photographs, quite a number of which are obviously fake, but in the things which are not. And they're always technically bad, but there are certain resemblances between photographs taken at enormously disparate points. And they have the same kind of structure. I don't look for a technically perfect photograph. But when you have enough bad photographs, which can be related together as obviously bad photographs of similar phenomena, this is progress of a very minuscule level, but it is progress. And this is as much as one can hope for. And therefore, I was very interested to know if you've seen any photographs which have been published in a review, which in particular seem to be bad photographs of the sort of phenomena which you saw.
I can't label any of these either off my own mind, but there are some photographs, sometimes I've passed remarks to Peter about this in the past, that I myself would say seem to be, in some of the written accounts sometimes, incredible, sometimes unbelievable, that I could not accept. But of course, this is my opinion, because that if I have seen one kind, then this is not to say that, but some of the accounts do seem, even to me, most remarkable, sometimes to me unbelievable. There is more than one craft which I saw. That also goes into the report. At one stage, I think there were 8. That's the figure that I just comes to mind, but I think it was, wasn't it? Certainly there was 8 at one stage. 8 in the sky at one time.
In the group?
Yes. Well, spread over the sky.
Yes.
No. But there was one craft which I drew and described, which was unlike this major craft which I began talking about, the mother ship or mother craft to get with. It in itself seemed to be just a cylinder. From our distance, about a quarter of an inch thick.
A cylinder?
A disc, I'm sorry. A disc, yes. About a quarter of an inch thick from where we were, and that had little light spots on it, rectangular light spots, which I suppose were some kind of porthole.
Could you please give us some indication of the relationship in time of what you're speaking about now with the initial sighting?
Oh, this was all over 2 days, 2 nights.
I see.
In 2 nights.
Over?
There were 2 long sightings which were described in the report. Now, virtually, these are the only ones which I could identify.
How long?
So how long? One was 2 hours. Well, it was longer than that, I think. wasn't it? Can you remember the figures? But it was considerable time. There was one stage, I think, when it was very, very long, yes. It went over 10 p.m. from about 5:45 till after 10.
Having regard back to the understanding of the question, would you call it a natural or a possibly supernatural manifestation?
Not supernatural as I saw it. No, that's my impression.
You've been largely on that, though.
Would you say there were machines manned by people going about some sort of operation?
This is exactly as it seems.
Let's go back to a quarter of an inch. Was it a quarter of an inch there, or a quarter of an inch at arm's length? I mean...
a quarter of an inch there. There.
A quarter of an inch there is still the same, isn't it?
But this was quite a minute sort of thing.
Yes, I see, but it's always difficult about that. I mean, it's just very west.
Yes. It just seemed out there a disc which was about a quarter of an inch thick.
But out there, it would only be about a quarter.
That's a quarter of an inch at arm's length, isn't it? You mean a quarter of an inch at arm's length?
No, a quarter of an inch as I saw it.
Of course, a quarter of an inch at 100 yards you can't see. Surely. Everybody imagines things at arm's length, I think.
No, as I saw it.
Do you mean...
As I saw it, it seemed to be, whatever the distance, whether it was 1 yard or 1 mile, I don't know, but it was a disc which, to my eyes, was about a quarter of an inch thick.
That's all right, then.
I'm not scientific. I'm not one of these fellows who knows how to measure or what to do with measurements once you've got them in the sky. You see, if I saw planes, I only know I can only judge the distance of a plane because I've seen one on the ground of that same model. But if you get a new kind of plane, I'm at a loss as to how big the thing is. No.
I will argue it's 3/4 of an inch.
Is that?
See a 707 flying above you, it's 3/4 of an inch in your definition. That's all. Not specific.
Yes.
That's quite simple.
Anyway, that's it.
Another question.
Yes.
Were you able to form an opinion as to whether the people that you saw, I call them people,
yes,
were killed in any way or had anything on their heads, or were they just little outlines?
They were, well, more than outlines, but they were seemed to be solids, but there was no indication of clothing.
No colour?
No colour.
What silhouette?
Silhouette.
Bill, can you be absolutely sure that there weren't just people on the deck of the ship offshore?
No, I can't. I can't be sure about anything. All I can be sure about is the image that I have in my mind of what I saw. And this had me worried. This is the reason for my getting several of the more educated among the witnesses to get into corners of the room and say, now, draw what you saw. And 3 or 4 of those drawings are incorporated in the report, and if you see them, that there are significant similarities.
That is to say, the object.
Different?
That's as much as you could possibly hope.
That's right.
Because people have entirely different ratios of graphic
Yes.
interpretation.
You'll notice, right, you'll notice one of them has in fact viewed it from above, which of course was impossible. But it's what he imagined it was.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bill, didn't you say that the thing took off after the sighting, which a ship
Yes.
couldn't possibly have done? So
Yes.
doesn't that exclude the possibility of it being a ship?
In those days, there were all kinds of rumours about machines with, the atomic age and all that. And hovercraft, I think it was just at the beginning of the age of the hovercraft. And this could have been a hovercraft to us, which is some kind, and particularly me as not being more the man of the humanities rather than the sciences. I was not even prepared at the beginning to really believe that they were not something which was quite from the earth.
In those days, you were lucky if they shot around between Portsmouth and the Isle of Wight. There's no doubt.
Yes. But to me, you see, and particularly being a bit cut off from the world there, that it in fact did coincide with some of the drawings that one had seen, but apart from the legs, it's not unlike a holocron. No. One thing that puzzles me, Father Gill, can I ask you this? If I'm right, you saw this craft and people appeared to be working on something.
Yes.
Then a day passed.
Yes.
During which nothing was there.
That's right.
And then you saw this and other craft again.
Yes.
Now, it's reasonable to assume that they might be working on something and come down the road with purpose of life. It causes you to wonder why, after an interval in which presumably they've gone away, they should then come back. Yes, I guess that second night I wondered. And for quite some time afterwards, of course my eyes were rarely off the skies at night, wondering whether I'd ever see such a thing again. This, of course, is not going to report because this is subjectiveness rather than the objective report that was meant to be. But yes, I guess I did, in retrospect.
It seems again you'd have qualified one of Alan Heinrich repeaters, I suppose.
The draft you mentioned, this platter on the corrugated iron roof, I suppose, guessing, and I'm only guessing, some such effect could be obtained by a downward draft of considerable force. Was that your impression as to what it might have been?
No.
It was not physically release. It was not physically open.
Oh, no, not physically anyway, no.
No, so it wasn't the sort of thing you might get with a scale.
No, it was rather like, let's say, a 6-inch bolt being dropped from say, 20 or 30 feet.
You felt no draft at the time?
No.
You feel that Dennis has had the experience of that phenomenon of
Yes.
We had to cross South Africa.
where you could see the water.
Right. And it ties up, of course, with photographs phenomenon. I believe that we are going to show, I believe we can already show, that the connection between some of these entities, entities they are, there's a definite, that this is, the phenomenon is identical. Some of this picture may be identical with what we call the poltergeist phenomenon.
Yeah, but Bill's citing this doesn't sound like a poltergeist.
The things dropping on houses.
Except that there was no dent, nothing visible there so much.
Why I find it read this way is because this is not the first time sighting has been associated with poltergeist.
No, the man in the bottom. Now, you have this communication, I'm actually going to talk. Did you think that there was a reluctance on their part to communicate back with you, or they did it in some because you insisted upon them answering as it were? What was your feeling?
We felt, coming to the subjective, we felt that they were responding.
That they deliberately wished to answer your
Yes.
note.
This was our interpretation. But of course, this may not have had any, again, may not have had any to do with it, but this is as we felt.
Yes.
By light?
Pardon?
This is their by light?
No, by
Their response, not yours.
our response was...
Yours was the light.
That's right.
What was their response?
Their response was hovering.